Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing podcast. Today, we have two very special guests with us. For those of you who don't know, one of Top Advisor Marketing's strategic initiatives for 2019 is to help women get their voices out when it comes to being a financial advisor in the marketplace. 51% of the population should be more represented when it comes to what is in the media, what information is available to consumers, especially when it comes to women, because 90% of women are going to be solely responsible for their finances at some point of their life. And the last survey said that upwards of 70% of them don't feel like they have been educated well enough and communicated well enough to handle those financial transactions after their husband passes. And since women live longer than men, well, that makes a lot of sense. So our guests today have co-authored a book called A Woman's Way, Empowering Female Advisors to Authentically Lead and Flourish in a Man's World. As I just said, I'm so excited of having Patty Kreamer and Michelle R. Donovan on today, because not only have they written this amazing book, but they also coach and speak about this. For those of you who haven't been paying attention to conferences, this topic is the number one topic that people want to hear about, because I think our industry is finally waking up, and thankfully they're waking up because of people like Patty and Michelle. So Patty and Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hey, thank you very much.
How did this all come up, everybody? Obviously there's a huge need, but both of you have written before, you've spoken before. Give us a little bit of the history of where A Woman's Way came from.
Well, this is Patty Kreamer. I must say that we've done a lot of coaching for probably the last 5 or 7 years. We've been working strictly in the financial advisor world, and it just became so obvious a couple of years ago that we're working with men, and there's so much talk about women in the industry, or lack of, I should say. Mm-hmm. And we just got to the point where we're thinking, what's going on here? So we started doing some research, and not just research out, on Google and stuff, but actually talking to people and saying, what attracted you to this, and why did you leave, or why are you staying? We found that there are so many, roadblocks to women getting into the industry, and it's not attractive. And so we made it our mission to support women. And that's when we started to get together to pull the information together to get the book written, because it's so important. Everybody talks about it, but no one's doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. And that's just it's such a disconnect. And we thought we need to be somebody that's going to be that catalyst that makes something happen. So that's why it came together. We had just a big epiphany that this is just not right, especially since women are designed and are ideal for this industry.
Absolutely. I want to tell everybody the immediate success of the book. It was released recently, #1 new release in financial services, #2 bestseller in financial services, and it focuses on leveraging the power of social media and networking, which are two humongous voids that we have in financial services. When you're sitting down and talking with your coaching clients, or you're speaking to a group of people, what are you hearing from them? Do they just have blank faces? Are they asking good questions? Are they totally oblivious to how even to authentically communicate? Help us with that.
Well, this is Michelle Donovan. Basically, I think in many situations where we're talking to folks, there are a lot of questions that come up that are really good questions. But I think that we see, like you had said, it is the #1 topic right now out in the industry. And it's a matter of, our people, they're talking about it. They're starting to get momentum. Women are waking up themselves, and men are starting to come to the forefront and be interested in how do we bring women into the industry. And not only that, how do we keep women in the industry? Because the turnaround rate is very, very high in terms of how fast people get out of the industry, particularly women. Mm-hmm. And so it is a dominant topic right now, and people were very interested in knowing how do we do this, and how do we make sure that women that come into the industry are successful?
One thing that I know is what I want to see is I want this conversation to turn to action. And that's what we really want. And it's not, a conversation is great, but now what do we do? Let's do something. And I think with all the things that are all of a sudden, it feels like there's a momentum because we have connections to a lot of very influential people who are getting ready to make that difference. So I feel like we're like in a volcano that's ready to erupt.
What is the action? What can I do? What can male financial advisors do? What can female advisors do to take this action and take control of this black hole of service?
I think what women need to do is include men. They need to be invited to the table. We've gone to several conferences where we're speaking and they have these forums where they bring the women together and they don't have any men in the room. So the conversation is kind of one-sided.
Right.
So as men, we need to invite them and as you said, we're not a niche. We are the majority. Women are. So let's not sit ourselves aside. Let's pull everybody together and then just be equal and not be a woman or a man and just bring everybody to the table to understand each other. I think that, there's a shift also in the boomers leaving the industry. It's an older industry, got the new millennials coming up and et cetera, the whole shift in that. And I think we just really have to invite everybody to have that conversation to understand one another and appreciate each other.
When it comes to the conversation, it seems to me that the conferences that I've spoken at, that Kirk and I have spoken at, it's just a sea of old men, right? And that's really what I'm, when I'm up on the stage, I'm seeing, and yes, there is turnover, which is wonderful, but it's still it's like an old golf boys club locker room. What action can we take, especially with both of us being at the table? And thank you both for saying that. I personally, I really, as the CEO of Top Advisor Marketing, want to be at that table, mostly to listen and find out what I can do. But I also just appreciate having a seat at the table. But let's talk more about that action. I don't want you to spoil the book, but you coach on this and speak on this a lot. So we're at the table. When we leave the table, what should we do?
Well, I think that when people are at the table together, one of the biggest things is to listen. I think there's a lot of room for people to be willing to listen to what the other side is saying and what the other needs are. The title of the book says a lot in terms of it being a woman's way. We recognize that the industry was founded and built by men, and men have a certain way of going about doing their business and how they have gotten the industry to this point. But the reality is that women think differently, they process differently, they engage clients differently, they have different talents that men have in terms of listening skills and being able to kind of engage that women's sixth sense. And so those skills need to be brought to the table and recognized by men, that women do things simply very differently. And one of the biggest things that we see is that women need to be given the freedom to have and develop their practice their way, a woman's way.
So many people listen to respond. They don't listen to listen. How do you teach men specifically to listen differently?
That's an interesting question because each individual is, obviously individual. And so they're unique. And I think that there are opportunities where when we're coaching with particularly men advisors, we get into the nitty gritty of potentially what are the sticking points, that they may be struggling with. And many times the interactions one-on-one with people are the things that really kind of rise to the surface. And so for that reason, one of the things that we bring into our coaching practice as a foundation is a program known as DISC, Behavioral Styles. And that DISC Behavioral Styles is not something that we just bring to the table and then it goes away. It's something that we work very hard with our coaching clients to get it into their DNA And that understanding of each other at a much deeper level enables people to be more open to listening and understanding why someone is behaving the way they do or why someone is communicating the way they do.
Gotcha.
And to piggyback on the answer to that question is our most, just like yourself, you're very engaged, you're very interested, you're on board, you get it, you want to make change too. And there are men like you, and there are men who it's not on their radar at all. So the men who are engaged in this need to be fully engaged and invited, as we said, to the table. And then what happens is that's how a movement starts, is it just starts to bring in those people who are not aware or are aware and don't care. And they become aware and they start to care because it's the norm. And then the movement begins to pull everybody in. But something has to start it. And so the men and women who are fully on board need to really just be big influencers on this and bring everybody along with them. So that's how I see it, is just the people who are in it, let's get moving.
Let's talk about a woman's way of running a practice. As an ex-recovering practice management consultant, we never talked about anything that was a woman's way. I mean, it was always, you're going to do it this way because this way is successful. And for some people, it wasn't. For, of course, many, it was very successful, which is why that company was the biggest coaching company for financial advisors. But give us an insight on what that woman's way is. What are some of the changes, whether they're major or minor, that you have seen when women are building their financial services practice that truly makes it their own?
Well, some of the ways that we highlight in the book is how we help women to lead their relationships. And one of the things that we've uncovered in coaching the folks that we have is that in many cases, women have internal barriers that get in their way of being as productive and as successful with their referral development as they possibly can be. And so we work very hard to help those women to get past those barriers and to flourish in that regard. And for example, one of those ways is men have a specific way that they particularly like to go about asking for referrals. Mm-hmm. And women sometimes, when they're taught that way, they feel as though that particular strategy or that particular approach is very uncomfortable. And I'll give you a very specific example, is that in many cases, women are taught that they should be asking for referrals during or at the end of a client review meeting. And for a man, that might feel comfortable. It might be perfectly fine, and it may work in some cases. However, for a woman, it feels incredibly uncomfortable, and it does not feel authentic, and it feels intrusive, and it feels as though they're selling and so forth. And so we help women to find their voice in how they articulate their request, number one, but also internally developing their confidence around the referral process, but more importantly, finding their way of when do they ask for the referral, how do they determine which clients to ask for the referral. Not all clients are at the right place for asking for that request. Mm-hmm. And so we really personalize it to the woman and to her needs and her abilities and her confidence level to ensure that she has success with that process.
That was so powerful. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here like, who does that? I mean, nobody does that level of tailoring. Patty, were you going to say something?
Yeah, Matt, I had an example. I was actually a speaker at a conference, and there was a panel that a woman was up on stage, and they were talking about women and men differences in the financial world. And she said that her and her partner, who is a man, they have clients, and they usually sit in together on the client meetings. So the couple came in, the husband and wife sat down, and the man and woman financial advisor, she and her partner, sat down, and the man started just saying, okay, here's your numbers, here's what we see, we got to invest this, we got to change that. And the woman said, excuse me, can you stop talking for just a second? And she looked at the clients and said, is something wrong? Or is everything okay? And they both basically teared up, and they were having some serious issues with their child. But the guy never even paid attention. And she was very intuitive in stopping. And the conversation took an entire 180-degree turn talking about that situation and the issue, and the numbers just fell on the floor. That didn't matter. But that's another thing, is there's a lot of intuition or just vision, just looking at somebody and understanding their body language. And that happens. She said it happens a lot. And now he has heightened his ability to hone in on reading people better because of her. But it's not a natural thing, but it is for women.
Yeah. Well, 70% of communication's nonverbal. As a communications major in college, that was one of the most eye-opening facts that we learned. And if you're not looking, again, so, people communicate in 5 different ways: at, around, through, over, or with. And this was a presentation that I've done, and we've done podcasts on it. But obviously, with is what we want to do. But most male advisors do the other 4. They're either trying to sound too smart, they don't care, they're very salesy, they're pushy, that sort of stuff. And I'm not trying to ostracize, because there are a lot of magnificent men who are financial advisors who have taken this. I can think of a couple right now who went through some advanced training that was offered through the FPA that helped them realize that. Michelle, when you were talking about the referral thing, well, both of you, when you were talking about the asking for referrals, I want to talk about centers of influence too, because how is that different in a woman's way when you're building relationships with centers of influence?
It's actually extremely different. And one of the things that we emphasize is how do you educate COIs on how to refer you effectively? And the thing that we recognize very quickly is that COI relationships are very rarely set up from the very beginning with expectations and clarity. And so you get into the relationship, and like you really haven't had a discussion with a COI as to what kinds of things you're expecting from each other and what kind of relationship do you want to have. And so women are more interested in having that kind of a relationship with their COIs. We've encountered that many women advisors complain about COIs because COIs, from their perspective, oftentimes don't take them seriously. And we hear some amazing stories, some of which are in the book, that you just kind of have to shake your head and say, I can't even believe that actually happens. But the relationship built from the ground up with an understanding of reciprocity, clarity, having clear communication that's specifically what women are looking for. And to take it even one step further back, women are much more interested in being very specific with who they choose as COIs. And so we do a fair amount of work in coaching with our clients on how do they define what it is that they're looking for in terms of qualities, characteristics of the individuals that they want to spend their time with.
Wow.
And we did a lot of, as we mentioned earlier, we did a lot of interviewing of female financial advisors, and lo and behold, we couldn't believe that in 2018 there was an old boys network that is so strong, that is so powerful, and it's still alive. I thought that would have been gone by now, but apparently it's not, and so it's there, and so it does ostracize a lot of women out there, because a man will look at a woman over lunch and say, oh, I'll refer business to you. And then as soon as he gets a referral, he turns to his old boys network, and there it goes. And so what we've done, we actually took action. This is one of those action things. We didn't just talk about it. We have Celebrating Women of Wealth Management happy hours 3 or 4 times a year. And we invite women advisors and their centers of influence, meaning women CPAs, women attorneys, estate planning attorneys, bankers, mortgage, all females, and they just stand around and they drink wine and eat some food, and they get to know each other on a very safe, supportive level. And so that's one of the things that we've done to combat that.
I've always been very surprised at conferences or in just being in wealth management offices that it's almost like Mad Men. Even some of the comments that still happen directed at women, it's not the 1950s or 60s anymore. And I ask that question all the time. In fact, I've lost a client because I said, what year is this? You can't do that. And he was like, whoa, what was that? All right. Well, I don't want to work with you either. So I love the action focus. Thank you so much for being action oriented. There's a lot of philosophy out there, but there isn't a lot of applied philosophy. To close things up here for today, if you both individually could give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be?
I think I would suggest somebody take, from a productivity standpoint, whether you're a woman or a man, but specifically women, is to really just understand what it is that you want, to take control of your day and to take control of what it is that you want to go after. So many people are just running through their day to day and their life and not really having a mission. So from a productivity standpoint, you plan for other people. That's what you do. You're a financial planner. You plan for other people's lives. Plan for your own as well. And I think that's stop and really pause long enough to say, what is it do I want? How do I want my day to run? How do I want my life to be? Who do I want in it? Who do I want not in it? And so just stop and take a look and take control of your life.
Yeah, and from my perspective, one of the things that I often share with our clients and even with people who are not our clients is the message of focusing on the fact that we each need to take the responsibility to lead the relationships in our lives. So many people stand on the sidelines and get frustrated with individuals. Advisors get frustrated with their COIs. They get frustrated with their clients not referring them as often as they think they should be, and so forth. And one of the things that's highly important is to recognize that a relationship, it's kind of like the Sir Isaac Newton's, one of his laws that says an object in motion stays in motion in the same direction, at the same speed, and so forth, unless it's acted upon by an unbalanced force. And relationships are the same way. They keep going in the same direction. They keep doing the same thing. They keep going through the same motions and behaviors. And if you're not happy with how a relationship is working, you need an unbalanced force. And that unbalanced force has to be you to take the step to do something different, to initiate a different response. And that is so powerful when you apply that concept to the relationship that you have with anyone you're looking to get referrals from in particular. And we see that over and over, that one of the most powerful things we do is help people to really take the leverage and take the leadership role in their relationships.
When I have the two most worthless degrees you can get in undergrad, philosophy and communication. And that was my grandfather told me that. But yeah, very supportive gentleman. Socrates specifically said, first off, the greatest journey that anyone can take is within, and then paraphrased 2,000 years later by Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee said, be water. Water adjusts to any of the containers that it is, and always make sure that your glass isn't too full. So many advisors think that they know everything. So many advisors think that just because they talk for a living, they're great communicators, or that they have 2 ears, they can listen and they don't need to practice. I absolutely love your closing points here. What do I want? So many people don't even know the depth of that question. And as a practice management coach, I can tell you and support you in the fact that very few planners have a plan.
That's right. That's right.
I love leading relationships. In a past life, I was a marriage counselor, which hands down is the worst job in the world, by the way. And the number one reason why people get a divorce is because they don't set clear expectations. They think the other person knows what they want, but they've never communicated it. This is the same thing that we deal with in business relationships, especially with centers of influences, with referrals, with clients. I also love your action of actively working to create relationships. A lot of people have great relationships. They just don't know what to do with them after. Like, oh, I love these people. I know everything about their kids and grandkids. And, we spend 2 minutes on their portfolio and an hour and a half talking about life. I love that you teach the next action steps. And I personally, for everybody at Top Advisor Marketing, want to thank you very much for being that force of change, being that interrupting force, something that is going to change the course and direction of where we're going in financial services, because there has to be a change. The attrition rate is abysmal. What are we at? 10% of our industry is women now. Is that? Do you know where that number is?
I think it's 16.
Yeah, I think
it's 16, okay.
The latest is like 16.
It's been 16 or 15 for the last probably 12 to 15 years. It has not budged an inch.
And that's brutal. And what we're finding in the women who I have worked with and we currently work with at Top Advisor Marketing really are some of the best advisors because they look at things so fundamentally differently and embracing that difference and realizing that is appropriate to run a financial services practice a woman's way.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we believe that certainly women can be very, very successful when they are authentic to themselves and, grow their practice a women's way. And we believe that men can certainly learn from that process as well. We've had several people already read the book and say, we've got to get this in the hands of more men as well.
Yeah.
And I hope that anybody listening to this will just literally be honest enough with themselves to stop for 5 minutes. I don't care how long it is, 5 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and just really think about if you are happy where you are and if you want to make a change. If you do, then get on that. If you're fine where you are, that's awesome. Don't, just continue on. But if you really are honest with yourself or you're doing exactly what you want and as happy as you want to be, and then you need to really take the time to look into that. Don't just listen to this and put it aside. Give yourself the gift of some honesty.
You are going to create a free chapter for people to download, and we'll make sure that we put that URL in our show notes. If you want to know more, which if you have listened to this and don't want to know more, then I don't know why you're listening to our podcast. But first off, go on Amazon or whatever your local book place is, and look for A Woman's Way, Empowering Female Advisors to Authentically Lead and Flourish in a Man's World. That's the first call to action. Number 2, if you would like to have the chance to be coached and learn from our wonderful guests today, Patty Kreamer and Michelle R. Donovan, go to productivityuncorked.com or you can call or email 412-352-2888. Go to productivityuncorked.com. There's so much stuff there. Great blogs. If you're looking for a speaker at your local FPA event, your regional event, you're talking to your broker-dealer, your RIA, your networking group, please bring both Patty or Michelle or one or the other, whatever, in to talk about this, especially if you have looked around and realized that, you are either the only woman or you're looking around as a man and realizing there are no women here. Why is that? Why aren't we being inclusive? But we need to be inclusive. There is a change that's happening. And as I said with social media 10 years ago, you're either going to get on this train and ride it and be successful, or you're going to be left behind and you're going to be really sad and alone. Mm-hmm. We don't want you to be sad and alone. So Patty and Michelle, thank you so much for your book. Thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast today. And thank you very much for being that force for change.
Well, you're very welcome, Matt. We are very grateful for being here, and we appreciate you being an advocate for this message as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Matt. We so appreciate you.
Thank you. For everybody at Top Advisor Marketing, if you have not subscribed to this podcast yet, make sure you click that subscribe now button below. If you know somebody who could really use to listen to this podcast, make sure you just click that share button. It's super easy to share this podcast and send it to any of your professional friends or family. And last but not least, please make sure you go to productivityuncorked.com and find out what you can do to be that force for change. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Are you ready to change the way you communicate with your clients? Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your area? Learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your business. Contact us today and see what the power of podcasting can do for your business. Click on the Contact Us link on our website at topadvisormarketing.com and set up a call to learn more. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook for more updates and information.